He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
I am always wondering what does it look like in different spaces, and how do different groups of people in different parts of the world move through some of those conversations that can be difficult to talk about, which sexual health and sexual agency often are, especially if you are in a female identifying body. Those things, it becomes even more complicated when we look at LGBTQ issues, but those conversations are oftentimes not at the forefront, even though that's something we're living with and that's happening to us on a daily basis.
Making her way from California State University this summer, Professor Angela Cooke-Jackson joins Massey University on a Fullbright scholarship.
If you think about the work that we have been doing at CARE, particularly in terms of exploring this question of what does it mean to build solidarities across diverse intersections, Angela's work really fits within that umbrella more broadly.
Angela joins Massey's CARE, that's the Centre for Culture-Centred Research and Evaluation, and it's led by Professor Mohan Datta, who you just heard there. The centre focuses on community-led communication solutions around indigenous health, migration and poverty.
One of my primary topics tends to go back to sexual health and sexual agency. I've lived in Australia and done some work with some nurses there, some practitioners there, some social advocate groups there, and talking mostly around the Torres Strait Island and Aboriginal people. And trying to emphasize my work that I've done around youth agency and youth involvement. I was also there thinking about how differently the New Zealand community might think about this is also having an indigenous group of people. I felt in Australia, but I felt historically there was a sense of being still behind time in the way that the U.S. had moved forward with a lot of our policies, our work that we've done with indigenous people, our work that we've done with African American people. Australia felt a little bit behind the time. And so I was curious because I knew in the Maori and I knew in New Zealand that the language was there was really a work for the language to be preserved. There was a work for school systems to be preserved, for education around Maori education. So these are some of the general things that I had as my knowledge base.
How has your experience been in America, as an academic, as an African-American woman as well? How has your experience been in terms of what you've seen have been some of the milestones that have marked the improvement of this communication, this cultural communication, cultural and health communication around sexuality within both Black and Indigenous communities in America?
I would say more so now, over the last 2 decades, I believe that there have been, even on a large scale level, more policies that have been put in place through our more affirming leadership, I will say, that have allowed women in general to be located in a space where they can say, oh, these are things that I have the right to work on. These are the rights that I have to my body that I can actually do something about. And so I feel like because there's been a larger movement in that direction, that is a Black woman, as a brown woman, and as I see with other women of color, we're having more information that is accessible to us, both through research and just in conversation. So because there's been a bigger body of research that has built around just that, I have seen more and more conversations whereby women feel a sense of agency to talk about some of the different health issues that they have, or even to talk about something like menstruation and menstrual cramps. So you're just seeing more spaces where those conversations are being more visceral and more in the forefront than they used to be.
So what can be learned and exchanged in this field of culture-centred communication and research between countries like New Zealand and the US? I'm Kadambari Raghukumar, and I'm joined by Angela Cooke-Jackson and Mohan Datta in today's episode of Here Now. Much of Angela's scholarship focuses on spending time with underrepresented communities facing health inequities in the US. She helps explore ways to equip communities across different age groups with tools to have those trickier conversations around sexual health and agency.
So some of the goal is to transfer that over here, but be talking more with a collective of females of all ages around not just sexual health, but sexual health agency, and then sexual health preparedness over their lifespan. What does that look like? And it really is very simply a building block. It's not something that necessarily gets all completed in one setting. So I'm not expecting for that to happen. I'm just expecting for conversations to happen and enlightenment to happen and getting the group, those who are here, those who are participating in the group, getting them to think about this kind of, aha, I never had these conversations before. What I'm hoping for is that I have a couple of weeks that I'm able to build relationships with some of the people here. And so part of it is building those conversations. And then part of it is allowing for them to offer space for me to come into dialogue with other female bodies that my hope that would identify as people of color and or Maori indigenous people.
Although her time here will be mostly spent on conducting workshops and public lectures, along with writing white papers, it's a long road of deeper work with community groups for which this is really just the foundation, she tells me.
The dream, the beauty would be to sit down with a collective of women and talk about their journeys, both young and old, their journeys over the negotiation of their sexual health and their sexual agency. In the waylay, part of the other objective is to really be able to participate with Mohan, to participate in thinking about how do we approach conversations around race and racial reconciliation in different ways. And I don't know that I have any grand expectation because I recognize that I am not from here and I am not a part of the group. And sometimes as an outsider, you're not perceived as someone who you could be perceived as someone who is just seeking information. And I don't want that to be the case. For me, even if this is the first round, this is an opportunity to develop relationship and hopefully be welcomed back to do some of the more in-depth long-term work. And I'm totally fine with that.
The significance of this work comes at a challenging yet important time, with agencies across different spheres, including health, facing changes to funding and structure, both in the US and in New Zealand.
Some of my very early work was with African American communities in the US, looking at heart health inequities. And that is a natural alignment with Angela's work around issues of Black health. But then expanding from one particular identity group that is experiencing inequities to others and looking at what are the connections, what are the linkages and convergences, but even more importantly, how to bring communities together around those convergences. And what does actually solidarity look like when you're facing these structures that are organized in ways that are continually erasing, B, turning reality on its head through what we call communicative inversions, and using really divide and rule strategies so that communities are pitted against each other. So for instance, migrants are communicated that message that to align with issues of indigenous health, for instance, somehow takes away from issues of migrant health. So really working through those nuances to tease out how do you build the resilience and capacities of communities to challenge misinformation, disinformation that is directed toward dividing. What's really beautiful about Aotearoa is the ways in which Tangata Whenua have protested and have created an infrastructure for resistance. And I think, Aotearoa has much to teach. I regularly work with colleagues in the US, and I think that the sense of paralysis and hopelessness that you're seeing in the US is quite different from the texture of hopefulness, joy that you see in Aotearoa. That is perhaps because Tangata Whenua have shown us through their struggles that one actually not only survives through this, but thrives through this. So I think there are some really good points in terms of movement back and forth, not only what we can learn from this kind of work in the US, but also what we teach our colleagues and interlocutors doing this work in the US about how you thrive and survive.
Next week, we carry on the conversation with the work Professor Mohan Datta has been doing with CARE. Today's episode of Here Now was mixed by Ben Pierce, and my name is Kadambari Raghukumar. Every week, I bring you a story from around New Zealand featuring people from around the world who live here. You can find more Here Now episodes on all your favourite podcast platforms, as well as on the RNZ website.